Feeling? Have a good lunch?
You should guess what we have.
Pizza.
Yeah.
Salad. First of all, he planned this lecture. Second of all, torturous. It's going to be fun. Yes. It will be out there during game time, and whatever happens to it during game time is not my concern. All right. So we're not going to learn anything new today, roughly. We're just going to practice with while loops and for loops to try and get comfortable with them. So we're going to quickly go through this again, just to make sure you guys remember. So remember, the classic way we think about this, right? Oh, why is his mouse on the wrong screen? Okay. So the classic way we think about this, right, is that when you say a equals 7, what happens? The computer's going to remember a is 7, b remembers it's 3, right? And then we can skip all this, and we know it's going to write it out like this, right? So when we have a string, just remember that each letter is stored in a different cell. And this kind of contract like this, we call this a list in Python. You might also hear it called an array. Technically, arrays and lists are different, but at the level you guys are at, you can think of them as the same thing. And in Python, you don't just have to put letters there. You could put anything, right? So you could have a list of numbers. You could have a list of lists, right? Each item there could be another list that stored multiple things, right? Each item could be, numbers. They could be ints, floats, anything you want, right? They could be binary numbers, exactly, right? Okay, so then we talked about this loop program, right? All right, yeah, so what we're going to look at right now is, so everyone make a new file called loop.py. Another new file called loop.py. I have it written on the board right there. Yep. So I want to see thumbs up once you have a new, it's written on the board right there. So I want to see thumbs up from people once you have a new blank Python file called loop.py. So once you have that, let me see some thumbs up. If you need help, let us know. How do you get out of what? Let me look. Oh, yeah. So if, in there you do Control Z. Yeah. Yeah, so if you still have your interactive Python shell open, that's Control Z to quit out of that. Again, because programmers are old and weird. Okay. You're good? The ampersand? Yes. Yeah, so just a reminder, right, when you say gedit, that's the name of the editor. It's like Microsoft Word. It's a text editor. You're telling it to open loop.py. And then the ampersand means run this in the background so I can still use the terminal. If you didn't put this ampersand, you wouldn't be able to type stuff into the terminal anymore until you closed gedit. So that's why you need that ampersand. OK, so who has a blank file called loop? 1, 2. OK, you guys are working. So in your terminal, we're typing this. Will, it might be helpful if you just come sit down here with him. So that's something for the computer. It's the process ID. So it's the computer has to keep track of all the programs you're running. And so that's just the number of that program, right? So now you're going to do, instead of touch, you want to do gedit here. In the Python right? Just how it is a bit. Yeah, you don't, you can, just retype it, gedit, and then loop.py with the ampersand. Right? Because touch just creates the file, right? So touching it again just does nothing, because you've already created that file. But that should open a new window. Yep. OK. You have a new window? So touch loop.py, then gedit loop.py ampersand.
You told them to create a new file?
Yeah, we're making a new file.
So touch, create.
OK. You guys all have it? OK. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and implement a for loop ourselves. So we looked at how we could say this, right? We said something like, for letter in hello, print letter, right? You remember this? We called it IDK because we didn't know what it meant, but now we know it means letter, right? Remember, so we wrote this program, right? But now, what if you didn't have for loops? Could we implement this ourselves using while loops? Okay? And we're going to use indexing again, right? So what we're going to do is with a while loop, we first want to get name of 0, then name of 1, then name of 2, and we want to keep going. And when do we want to stop? So we're going to start at 0, then 1, then 2, when we get to the end of the word, right? How do we know we're at the end?
When you fill in all the numbers with each letter. So name 0 would be H for hello.
Yep.
Name 1 would be E.
Yep.
The E in hello. So on and so forth.
So when do we stop?
At O.
At O. How do we know that? What if I don't give you hello? What if I give you a different string?
Well, it would be the last letter in the word.
It'd be the last letter in the word, but how do we find that? All right. So let's start coding. Then I need to get a number next to me. Okay. Okay. So we're going to make a new file. So I'm going to do what you guys just did. Okay. So don't follow me quite yet. I'm just going to show you what program we're going to try and write. So we want a program that does the same thing as this. So I guess I have to scooch that over so you can see it probably. Is that? Oh! Sorry. Let me switch to this screen. There we go. Okay. So what we want is we want to say word, or let's call it text. Why not? Let's say text equals input, and you guys can write this part, equals input, enter a word, like that. So if we do this, and then we say print text, what is this program going to do?
It's going to print enter a word.
Is it going to print enter a word?
Wait, no, it's going to have us enter a word, and then once we click enter, it prints.
It prints that word, right?
Yeah.
So let's test that. So you guys should type this up and make sure you agree with me. But when we run this, I'm going to put in Ronak because I miss him, and it is Ronak, right? So once you're here, give me a thumbs up. Good. And it works? You ran it?
Yeah.
Nice. So for you, while these guys finish this up, see if you can get it using a for loop like that. See if you can get it to print each letter on its own line. We'll do it together in a minute, but see if you can get there.
I got the word.
You got the word?
Yeah.
You too? Okay. So help her. Are you all good? No? Do you need help? Okay. I'll come take a look. It's always okay to ask for help. Yeah, so save this. So you can do Control S, or you can move your window over to the save button. Yep. And now go to your terminal, and you're going to run it. So Python 3. Right? And you're going to type in the terminal here. Yep. You're going to type Python 3, space, and then loop.py. Right, the new file we just wrote. And run that. And then, oh, you switched the parenthesis and the quote there. So the parenthesis needs to go before the quote. On right here, right? You see how it is on mine, the the parenthesis goes before the quote. So it's input, open parenthesis, then open quote. Yeah. So you need to do, yeah, exactly. Yep. So now save this again, and now run it again. So you can just hit up to rerun the same command. Yep. So now type anything you want in. Then hit enter. Exactly. Okay. Yes, I want you to use, so the next thing we want to do is we want to use a for loop to print each letter of the word that the user types in on its own line. So who has a suggestion? I'm a monkey and I do exactly what you say. What should I do?
Last time we used like for FOR.
Yep. So where should I put that?
I don't know, but I know we just use that word.
Okay. So if we want to print out the word, we have to ask the user what the word is first, right? So it should be after line 1, right? Does everyone agree?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm supposed to type in for? What else?
Enter, after when you're done.
Space, good.
Letter.
Letter, sounds good.
In.
In,
And then enter a word, right? Or enter a word.
not quite.
Or letter in.
Text, the name of our variable, right? Okay, then what? I've got text. What do I need to do next?
Enter word. Or enter a word.
We already have that text is input, right? So now text is just is whatever they typed in. So there's a hint over there.
Print.
Well, we're missing one thing before we get to print.
Oh, in. No.
We have in,
Oh.
not quotation marks,
Colon.
colon, good. And then I have a print. Is it in the right place?
It should be. Oh no.
Who thinks this print is in the right place? One? Who thinks it's in the wrong place? Where do you think it should be?
It should be tabbed.
It should be tabbed over. Do you agree?
I don't know.
Because it needs to continue after the 4 letter in text.
Okay, what do we want to try first? Tabbed over or not tabbed over?
Let's try not tabbed over.
Not tabbed over? Okay. So when I run this, oh, sorry, it went off the screen. Oh, we got an error. And what does that error say? Look at the
Indentation error.
indentation error. Good. So what should we try next? Let's try it with a tab. Question? Okay. If you have a question, always ask.
And it should work.
Okay.
I don't know why.
What should I type in?
Hello. Goodbye.
Hello.
Hello.
Who? So is that quite right?
Yeah, kind of.
Did that print every letter out on its own line?
No.
Why not?
Printed the word on every line.
Because we're printing text. What do we want to print there? Not text, but
Letter.
letter. Exactly.
I see.
So now will it work?
Yeah.
What should I type in?
Hello.
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 There we go.
There we go.
Okay, good. Good. You guys are programmers now.
Yes.
Okay, so now, pretend we lived in a world that didn't have for loops.
Uh-oh.
Could we still write this program?
Maybe.
Possibly.
Maybe. Okay, good answer.
Wait.
uh,
Yeah.
yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to write it with while loops. So I'm going to get rid of this, and you guys should get rid of this too.
Okay.
And we're going to re-implement. Actually, you know what? Actually, even better than getting rid of it, comment this out. So just put a hashtag before both lines.
Yeah, I should go put that.
So that way you remember what you were trying to do, right? And then you can even add a comment to yourself to remind you what you're doing. So you could say like, we want to implement the above code. Oh, I hit caps lock. The above code using only while, right? You can leave little notes to yourself. That's really what this comment thing is for, right? Is leaving notes to yourself, right? But you can also use it to sort of turn off code, because Python's just going to ignore every line that starts with a hashtag. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a hint, right, which is that we're going to be using indexing, right? And the index is going to change every time. So we're going to need a variable to keep track of our index. And I'm going to call it index. Does anyone want to guess what index should start at? The beginning, which is? Not quite. What's remember, the index is what goes in these brackets here.
Right. Oh,
So
it should be 0.
it should start at 0, exactly. Okay, so then we know we need a while loop, so I'm going to write while, right? And let's just sort of, let's ignore the condition for now. We'll think about that later. And in fact, let's just write true here. So remember, as long as the answer to that question is yes, the loop is going to keep looping. So if I put true there, what does that mean? Is true true or false? So is it going to keep looping? So it's just going to loop forever, right? While true means loop forever, right? You can think about it like this, right? Equivalent to that is like, what if I said 0 equals 0? 0 is always equal to 0, right? So that'll loop forever, right? Same as like what I showed you before, right? If we said 3 less than 7. 3 is always less than 7, so this loops forever, right? But we can just put true, and that means the same thing, right? Because 3 less than 7 is the same thing as true, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So we'll think about a better condition later, but for now, let's just say while true and keep going, right? And we need a tab, right, because we're going to be in this while. So what do we want to print? We want to print the first letter. So maybe let's get the letter. So letter equals, and what does letter equal? 5? What does letter equal? How do I get the first letter?
0.
What 0? Okay, yeah, we need brackets and 0, but what are we getting the 0 element of?
The first letter.
So yeah, this bracket 0 means get the first letter, but get the first letter of what?
Enter a word.
Of enter, which what did we call that? We called it name in other examples, but what did we call it here? Before the input?
Text.
Text. We called it text, right? So we want to get the first letter of the text, right? Sounds good. So is this going to work? Let's try it.
I think it's going to get the first.
So what do we think is going to happen when I run this?
It's going to print the first letter in whatever word you're going to put.
How many times? Once?
Over and over.
Forever. Okay, so we think this is going to print the first letter forever. I think that's a pretty good guess. What do you think, Will?
Whatever is wrong.
Okay. So since we're testing Will here, we'll put Will in. So we think we should get capital W's forever, right? So it's running forever. We're stuck in an infinite loop, but it's not printing anything. Why isn't it printing anything? Well, did we call print? No, we said letter equals text of 0, but we didn't do anything with it. So what should we put here?
I have a problem.
Yes.
I ran that program prematurely,
Uh-huh.
and now it's stuck.
Yes, did anyone run this and now they're stuck in an infinite loop? Okay. If you did, remember, does anyone remember how you get out of it?
Control C, enter.
Control C, enter. You don't need enter, just Control C should work. But yes, Control C. And then if you're stuck in the Python REPL, what do you do?
Control Z.
Control Z. Good. Good, you're good. You guys are real programmers. This is good. So let's put our print back in, right? And what am I printing here? Text?
Text, yes.
We're printing text?
No, printing letter.
We're printing letter.
Letters, yeah.
Okay, so now we think this should print Will forever, right? Or it should print W forever. So let's try it. Let's put Will back in, and we think we should get infinite capital W's, and then I'm going to have to manually quit this program. Okay, good. Yeah, so I get infinite W's. And it prints them out very quickly, yes. Okay, so now, what do we want to do, right? We don't want to get the 0th letter every time, right? Sometimes we want to get the first letter and the second letter and the third, we want to get letter 0, then we want to get letter 1, then letter 2, and letter 3, right? And we created a variable for this, right? So what if instead of 0 here, what if we put index, right? So now, question, is this going to do anything different?
Probably.
Why?
Index of 0.
Yeah, but index,
What is index?
index is 0, so it won't change.
Index is 0, so this is going to do the exact same thing, right? Because when Python sees index, it knows we mean 0.
Yeah.
So what do we have to do? We have to change the index every time through the loop, right?
So should we add, like,
Add 1 to it, right? So now this is a fun little exercise here. How do we add 1 to a variable and remember that? So we have here, right, index equals 0. And I want a line of code that no matter what the value of index is, it sets index to be 1 bigger than that. How could we write that? So if we want to give index a new value, what do we have to say? Like just if we wanted to say index was 7, how would you write that?
Take 0 off.
Write a new line of code. Like I'm going to write a second line of code after this. It's going to change index to be 7. What would I write? Index equals 7, right? So I could do this, right? But now, instead of 7, I want it to be whatever index used to be plus 1. right? So what do I put here instead of 7? We could put 0 plus 1, right? And that works. But what if index started at 2? Does this still work? Is index going to be 3 now on this line? No, right? So, well, it's just going to set it equal to 1 again, right? Because it's just 0 plus 1. So instead of 0 plus 1, what do we want to add 1 to? 2, but, if you say 2, I'm just going to change this again, right? Like if we put a hard-coded 2 here, what am I going to ask you? I'm going to say, well, what if index started at 7? Then we want to get 8, right? You don't want to have to go in and change the code every time, right? So what can we put here so that no matter what index is, it will add 1 to it? This is a hard thing to get the first time you see it. It doesn't make sense, right? The first time you see it. But let's think about this, right? How do I get the value of index? Well, I just put index, right?
Yeah, index equals index plus 1.
Index equals index plus 1. Good. So this looks weird, right? Because we're used to thinking that equals means equality, right? And so, when I look at this, my brain is like, well, this just looks like something that's wrong, right? Because index doesn't equal index plus 1, right? Those are different numbers.
The first line would be index equals 7, and then second line would be index equals index.
Right, exactly. Because you have to think, how does Python see this, right? Python thinks, right, I'm going to go to my box where I have index, right? When it sees index equals, it says, and index is 7 right now, right? It thinks, I'm going to go to my box where I store index, and I'm going to put a new number here. And what number am I going to put there? Well, I'm going to put whatever this ends up being, right? And then I'm going to look at this expression. And how do I calculate this? Well, index, I'm going to go look up what index is. It's a 7, right? So I'm going to plug in a 7 here. And then I'm going to say 7 plus 1, and I'm going to get 8. And then I'm going to say, well, I'm going to go write 8 in this box, right? And if I ran this line of code again, index would be 9. And if I ran it again, it would be 10. If I ran it again, it would be 11. So how does that fix our problem here? Exactly. And one thing just for you guys to know is that this is an operation that you do very commonly in programming. And so Python gives you a special way of writing this easier. So you can also write, this is equivalent to index plus equals 1. So in Python, a plus followed by an equals means increment this number by that amount. It means change index by plus 1, right? So you can write this, or you can write this. I think for beginners, this is easier because you're sort of explicitly writing out exactly what you mean. But as you become more proficient with programming, you start getting lazy, and you don't want, especially, imagine if you had a long variable name and you have to type it out twice, it gets annoying. So programmers are lazy, so they like this. But when you're just starting out, I think this is very clear what you're doing, right? Does everyone understand why index equals index plus 1 works? Does that make sense? OK. So what's going to happen when we run our program now? Uh-huh. And then what's it going to do after it prints out the whole word? So I'm going to type in will. It's going to print W-I-L-L, and then what's it going to print? It's going to give us an index out of bounds error, exactly. And we get an index error, right? So now, what do we need to change to fix that? Why does it go forever? What line of code? On my screen. True. Which line? Yeah, the while true, line 6, right? So what do we need to change? Well, we don't want to go forever. We want to stop eventually. And when do we want to stop? Wait, when we get to the last word. How do we tell when we're at the last word, the last letter? How can we tell when we're at the last letter? Remember, think about this, right? When you're looping through, you do 0, 1, 2. What number is the number where it's wrong? Right? Remember we said this last time, right? If the index is ever greater than or equal to the length of the string, you get an error, right? So when do we want to stop?
At 4.
Huh?
4.
At 4 for a length 3 string, but in terms of the length of the string, right? Because I can type in anything I want. So we can't just say while index is less than 4, right? Because then that only works for strings of certain length, right? So what can I write here?
Well, index is
right? Think about this, right? It's valid as long as index is greater than or equal to the length of the string, right? So this is when it's invalid, right? This is when it's wrong. So when is it right?
Less than the number that you're printing.
When it's less than what? Remember, we have access to this len function that gives you the length of a string. So as long as it's less than that, right? Does that make sense to everyone? I'll go through it again more carefully in a second,
Oh, I get it.
right? But so let's think about what this means, right?
Because it's going to read the string on how long it is.
Exactly.
Until it's the end, it'll stop.
So what we're doing, right, is
That makes more sense when you type it out.
we've got text equals, someone give me a string.
Text equals where?
Where? Like this?
Yeah.
Okay. How many letters is that?
Just 5.
5, right? So we know len of text is equal to 5, right? So what we want to say is while, what we wanted to say was this, right? While our index is less than 5, right? Because we wanted to do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
right? But instead of putting 5, because we want this to work for any string, we don't hard code 5 in. We ask Python, what is the length of the text? Okay, I know this is kind of new. We just talked about this today, but does that make sense? Okay, who thinks that this program is right now? Who thinks we have a bug? And who thinks it's right? You think it's right? So let's try it. Ooh, sorry. So our word is where? So who thinks this is going to work? Okay, let's try it. Ooh, and there's suspense because my terminal goes off the screen.
Yeah, where?
Beautiful. So,
We hit with what we did with the other program. We looped it.
exactly.
We keep it.
Yep. So there's nothing you ever need for loops for. We call for loop sort of like a convenience, right? Because the for loop version of this program is 2 lines, right? It's for letter and text print letter, right? And the while loop version is what? 5 lines, right? So the for loop can make code easier to read and easier to write, but the for loop is never necessary, right? The for loop you can write the for loop yourself in terms of while. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to think about this. Just, let this wash over you. Read through the code one more time. Make sure you really understand it. And if you have questions, let me know. Yeah, that's also true. Does this work for everyone? Does everyone's version of this work?
Yeah.
Everyone gets their word printed out just like with the for loop? All right.
Space. ¿Cómo se dice space?
Okay. Espacio? Sorry, our Spanish-speaking person couldn't be here today, so we're doing the best we can.
Get rid of. Also.
All right. So everyone else is happy and on board with this? This makes sense to everyone?
Yep.
All right. So what we want to do next is we're going to make a new script, another new script, another one, and another one. That's what coding is. It's all practice. So we're going to touch. I'm going to call this numConverter.py. You can put it all as one word. You can put underscore. You can't put spaces. You can put spaces in a file name, but it's weird, so don't do it. I like putting underscores when I want a space. And then you're going to open it in gedit, like this. And you should have another blank file. All right. And so I'm going to write out what we want to do on the board here. Yes, I'm going to give you guys an exercise, and then you guys are going to get 5 or 10 minutes to work on it, and then we're going to come back together and live code it on mine. All right? So what we want to do is, and I'll give you some starter code, right? So we're going to need, we're going to call it numstir equals input,
And that pro.
enter a number, like this.
You sing super slow.
Write associated with what you want.
Okay, yeah. So just put this in. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and figure out together how the int function works. So remember, in our calculator program, we use the function int, right, to convert our input from a string to a number, right? You guys remember that? So we're going to try and figure out how that function was implemented. We're going to try and do it ourselves, all right? And the thing we're going to start with is we're going to start with removing spaces from a number. So you're going to type something in, like, for example, 1 space 2 space 3. And we want our program to convert this
Try it.
to just the string 1, 2, 3.
Keep saying try.
So we want a program that removes spaces from a string. OK? And you can do this with a while loop, or you can do it with a for loop. One hint I'll give you is that you can make a separate string, right? So you have your num string, right, which is whatever the user typed in, right? What you can do is you can make another string called something like, maybe temporary string, tempster, like this, right? You initialize it to the empty string, which is just an open quote and a close quote. So a string with nothing in it, no text, no characters, right? And then you can use that plus equals that we used before to add characters to it one at a time. So if I said tempster plus equals e, and then tempster plus equals L, and then tempster plus equals I, what would tempster be? So it started empty. We added an E to it. We added an L to it, and then we added an I to it. So if I were to say print temp string, what would I get? Eli, exactly. So what you want to do is you want to go through every letter of num string one at a time, and you want to add them to temp string, but only if they're not equal to space. Does everyone understand what the question is?
Not really.
OK. So this here, right, what the code we have right now, asks the user to enter a number, right? And they're going to save it in num string, right? And what we're doing is we're going to try and help the user. So like in our calculator program, if you were to put spaces in your number, it would break. It wouldn't be able to convert it to a number properly. So we want to help them. We want to say, oh, well, if they accidentally put some spaces in, we want to get rid of them for them, right? So num string is going to look like this. It's going to have numbers, it's going to have digits and spaces. And we want to get a string that only has the digits, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to make a temporary string that starts out empty, right? And you're going to add characters to it one at a time, just the digits from here,
Careful with RMs because
right?
there's no way to recover it.
So
Easy way to recover. If you use RM to delete a file,
yeah.
there's no easy way to recover it.
So I'll even write that out for you. So if you make your temp string equal to empty string, right? Just two quotes, right? Then you're going to have to do something. And then when you print temp string, it should have no zeros. So just for example, if the user typed in 1 space 2 space 3 like this, when you print temp string, you should just get 1, 2, 3. So does everyone understand what the problem is? Like what I'm asking you to do?
Not really.
OK, what are you confused about?
Okay. I'm lucky just confused about it.
That's fine. But like what? Do you know what's unclear? Let me ask you this way. At a high level, do you understand what we're trying to do? Like, we're not thinking about the code. Like, you understand what we're saying, right? You get
We're just trying to have
you get a thing that's a mix of digits and spaces, and you want to take all the spaces out.
So we're just trying to remove spaces.
Right. Like, like in Google Docs, you can do like find and replace.
Yeah.
Right? We're doing like find spaces and replace them with nothing. right? Like get rid of all the spaces, right? Does that make sense at a high level? We're filtering spaces out of this string. Okay. And then if you need more hints on how to actually implement that, let me know, and I can give hints. But does everyone understand how this works, right? If you do temp string plus equals something, it's just going to add that string to the end. It's going to add that character to your string, right? So you might want to look back at loop.py, right? And either you could just copy paste this, right? Either copy paste the version we wrote using while or the version we wrote using for, right? Because probably what you're going to want to do is go through every character in this string, right? And then add them to temp string only if they're not equal to space. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's say, okay. Do you guys want to do this one together? And then I'll give you another one?
Yeah.
Do you think that would be helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. It's it's hard when you're first starting. There's no reason to be, that's perfectly reasonable. Okay. So what we're going to want to do here, right, is we're going to want to use a loop. Do we want to use, what do we think? Do we want to use a for loop or a while loop? Which do we like better? We like the while loop version? Okay. So I'm just going to copy paste this, right? I'm just going to grab this from our loop.py and I'm going to move it into here, right? I'm holding on. Don't you worry. I'm holding on. Okay. So has everyone copied the while loop over from loop.py into num converter? Yes? Okay. So now we need to change some variable names, right? Because we're using different variables in this program. So instead of text, what did we call it? It's called numString, right? So here, basically everywhere we have text, we want to replace that with numString, right? You might want to rename this from letter. There's no reason you need to, but it's not, these are digits and spaces now, but we can still call it letter. There's no reason not to. Okay, so now, instead of printing the letter, right, we want to, let's just try this. Let's just say our temporary string plus equals letter, right? So what is this going to do? Right? We're going through the string, right? 1 space 2 space 3. We're going through it one character at a time, right? And we're adding all those characters to temp string. So when we print out temp string, what are we going to get? It starts empty, right?
Oh, and then it adds one.
And then every time to the loop, we add the character to it.
Yeah.
So if we start with an empty string, and then we add every character from the first string into it, what have we done? Think about this, right? You open 2 Google Docs windows on your computer, right? And I type a sentence into one of them. And then I tell you to copy paste the first letter that I wrote into the second document. And then copy paste the second letter, and then copy paste the third letter, and then copy paste the fourth letter. If you did that for all the letters, what would you have done? You would have just copy and pasted what I wrote. So what is temp string going to be? It's just going to be whatever numString was, right? Because what did we do? We said go through every letter in numString and put it into temp string, right? So if we write hello world into numString, it's going to go through and it's going to write HELLO, right? It's going to write the whole thing, right? And so now we can test that. So Python 2. Why did I write that? That was just me fat fingering it. So, we don't even need to enter a number here, right? We're not checking the other digits, right? So if I write hello, it's going to print out hello, right?
If you printed that tapestry inside the loop, what will happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what Jerry just asked was, what if we print temp string here? What do we think? If we print it inside the loop. So every time through the loop, it's going to print out the current value of temp string. So just start by thinking about what happens the first time, right? So the first time through the loop, we're going to pull out the first character from numstring and copy into tempstring. So what is tempstring going to be at that point? Let's say we type in hello. What is tempstring going to be after the first time through the loop? And think about my metaphor with the Google Docs windows, right? So instead of, what I did before was I had you copy every letter over, and then I looked at your document. But now I'm going to look at your document every time you copy a letter over, right? So after you copy the first letter over, right, what does your document look like? Right, so I wrote hello in my Google Docs window, and then I asked you to copy the first character into your Google Docs window. What does your document look like? But of what? Just the first letter, right? So if I typed hello into my document, what does your document look like? H. Then you copy the second letter. What does your document look like? H-E. After the third copy paste, what does your document look like? Then what does it look like? Then H-E-L-L-O, right? So if we print out after every time, what are we going to see?
If we do 1, 2, 3, we're going to see 1, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Exactly. Exactly right. So we can make sure that we are right about that. So if I run this and we type in 1, 2, 3, we think we should get 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And then I think we're actually going to get 1, 2, 3 again because I have that second print. But yeah. So the first time through the loop, temp string is 1. The second time through the loop, it's 1, 2. The next time through the loop, it's 1, 2, 3. Does everyone make sense to everyone? Okay. All right. So that makes sense to everyone. Is everyone here? Does everyone have this program working? That just copies every character from one string to another? Does everyone have this working? Or are you guys still working? You have it, Angel? Do you two have it? Yours is working? Okay. So yours working? Okay. So now, instead of copying every character over, we only want to copy the characters that aren't spaces over, right? So what do we need to put in here if we only want to do this copying certain times? What Python construct do we use when we want to ask a question and have the computer do different things based on the answer to that question? What do we use? Do you guys need help debugging, or you've got it?
Have you tried running it?
Okay, never mind.
So above your loop, you're checking here if index is less than the length, but you never told it what index started at. So before the while loop, you have to say index equals 0. Right? Because you're asking it a question about index, but you didn't tell it what index was, so it doesn't know how to answer the question. Right? In math class, if your teacher says, is x less than 7, there's no answer to that question until they tell you what x is. Right? So if you're asking a question about index, you have to tell it what index is first. Did that work? It should just print out, it should just echo whatever you type back out to you. You just have a typo. You called it temp string up there,
Oh.
and then here you're calling it temp string. You just have to make sure you call it the same thing in both places. Right, on line 2 here, you have it as TEM, and then down here you have it as TMP.
Oh.
That's just a typo.
Confusing. Yeah.
So save that and try it again.
I like how it tells us which line it's on. So we
Yes,
can
it is
figure
nice.
out.
Yes, that's a skill, is learning how to read those error messages, because there's actually a lot of information
We did that.
in those. Good. And then you can get rid of this line, or you can comment it out, because we don't need it anymore. That was just for testing, right? So we could see how it worked all the way through. But we don't need this anymore. So you can put a comment before it, you can put a hashtag, or you can just delete that line. Because that was just for testing. Okay. So now I will ask my question again, now that we're all back together. Which is, I don't know. This seems reasonable. Okay. So what do we use in Python when we want to ask the computer a question and do different things based on if the answer is yes or no? What do we use? When we want to ask the computer a question, a yes or no question, and do something different based on if the answer is yes or no, what do we use for that? An if statement, right? Exactly. So we only want to add the letter to temp string if some condition is true, right? So we'll figure out what that is in a second, right? I'll just put if true here, right? We want to add this to this, right? And so if we run this version, right, it will be the same, right? Because if true just always runs, right? Because is true true? Yes. So if true will just always run. But we don't want to put if true here. What do we want to put here? We're trying to get rid of spaces. So we only want to keep the letter if what? So let's go through this one at a time. So on the first loop through, letter is 1. Do we want to keep 1? No?
No. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we have to have one.
Yes, right? We want to keep 1. The next character is space. Do we want to keep space?
No.
No. So what's our question? If it's not a space. If what's not a space?
The following.
We're close. We want to check. So what we said, you said not a space, right? So we want if something is not equal to a space. But we haven't quite figured out what this something is, right? But just think, right? What do we want to check if it's a space or not? Huh? Not the index, right? Because the index is the number, right? The index is this number. What do we want to check? We want to check the letter, right? And what did we call it? We called it letter. So if the letter is not a space, then we're going to keep it, right? So do we think this is going to work? So someone give me a number. 7. Someone give me a number of spaces I should put in.
Space
7 times? Okay, give me another number. 7. How many spaces should I put?
7.
One more number?
7.
You really like 7s. All right, so what number should we get?
7.
How many spaces should there be in the answer?
0.
No spaces. And again, we have suspense. Beautiful. Okay. So does everyone, let me know when you have this working. And also let me know if you have any questions, if something doesn't make sense. Keeps texting. Yours works? Nice. All right. So the next thing we want to say is, well, is this exactly the right question we want to ask? Because let's try something, right? What's going to happen if I run this and I say W space I space L space L? what is the program going to do here? So what's our check? Our check is just that it's not a space. So is W a space?
No.
So we're going to keep it, right? Is I a space? So we're going to keep it, right? So does this program do sort of exactly what we wanted it to do? We wanted to keep digits, right? But when we run this, it's going to give us will. So we don't just want to check for spaces, right? We want to check for spaces and, and letters, and so that's going to be a lot, right? If we have to write out a question for all of those.
Does it work with tabs? We could tab.
No, it would not work with tabs. It would only work with spaces right now. So if you put a tab, it wouldn't get rid of that either. So really what we want to check is, instead of checking all the things that it's not equal to, we really want to check if it's a digit, right? That's the real question we want to ask. And luckily for us, the people who developed Python thought of this, and they gave us a function, isDigit. So this, is that how you spell that? I always forget. It might be snake case, but I think that, okay, no, that works. Okay. So this is a little bit of a new syntax that we haven't seen before. So what you have here is you have letter, then a period, then isDigit, and then you have these parentheses with nothing in them. So far when we've seen functions, right, they've always looked like this. They've always looked like the name of the function of some argument, right? All the functions we've seen have looked like this. Input, len, string, right? All those functions look like this, right? There's another way to write functions, and what this is equivalent to is this is the same as if you had a function like this. IsDigit of letter, right? So when you see this, and if we ever get enough time to really go in depth into Python, we'll teach you sort of the exact differences as to why you would write it this way versus this way. But what you should think right now is that something dot something means that second thing of the first thing, right? It has to do with how you organize the code, right? So like this isDigit thing, right, operates on strings. So when they wrote Python, they sort of bundled this function in with strings. So for now, just think this is a weird way to write this, right? So we're asking the question, is letter a digit? Okay? And if it is a digit, right, so here, do we want to say is a digit or do we want to say not is a digit? Which one do we want? isDigit? Good. So we can test this now. You tested it, yours works? Good. So let me test it here for everyone to see. So let's do our sevens again. 7, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. But now I can also put in will 7, right? So what should we get here?
7, 7, 7.
How many sevens?
7, 7, 7.
How many sevens should we get? 3?
4.
4. Good. And that's exactly what we get, right? Good.
It's like smack the face with your hair. Only one.
So another reason we might want this, right, is a lot of people write numbers with commas in them, right? It's like, I'm sure you've seen this, right? Like you have like 10,000, right, with a comma. And now that will fix it for us, right? All right, but here's the question. Do we have it as a number yet? It's still a string, right? So we got rid of all these extraneous characters that we don't need, right? Like all these crazy spaces that he made me type, right? But this is still the string. It's the symbol 7, the symbol 7, the symbol 7, the symbol 7, not the number 7,777, right? So I'm going to have to take you guys back to elementary school when you learned how numbers work, right? Because I'm sure you haven't thought about this in a long time, right? So you guys, when you guys were in elementary school, did you learn numbers by writing out a big table where you would say you have your ones place and your tens place and your hundreds place?
Oh, that, yeah.
So someone give me a 3-digit number.
777.
Someone give me a 3-digit numbers where the digits are different. 123. That's a good one. Actually, I'm gonna do 2, 3, 4. Right? So 234. What does that mean? It means we have 4 in the ones place, right? You remember doing this in elementary school, right? 3 in the tens place and 2 in the hundreds place. Right? So now, because remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to tell the computer how to convert a string of digits into a number. So we need to understand how this number is encoded, right? So what do we do here, right? So how do we actually find this number? Well, we take 4, we multiply it by 1, right? Then we add 3 times 10. Then we add 2 times 100, right? That's what this means, right? 2 hundreds, 3 tens, and 4 ones, right? That's what this means, right? And how do we get from here to here and here to here, right? 10 is what? 10 is what compared to 1? 100? 30? No. Just 1 to 10.
10.
It's 10 more, right? It's 10 plus 10 times 10 divide 10. How do we get from 1 to 10 by 10? Do we add? We multiply?
Add 9.
You could add 9, but does adding 9 get you from 10 to 100?
No.
So it's not plus 9. How else can we get from 1 to 10? Times 10. Let's try that. 1 times 10 is 10. What's 10 times 10? 100. If we were going to go again, what's 100 times 10? 1,000, right, which is our next place, right? So every time we go across a place, we multiply by 10.
What if we go backwards?
Right? If you go backwards, you divide by 10, right? You start from a big number, and then you divide by 10, divide by 10, divide by 10, right? But it's going to be easier for us to go forwards, right? But if we're going to go forwards, what does that mean? It means we need to loop over our string backwards, right? We need to do the 4 first, then do the 3, then do the 2, right? How I wrote it here, right? So let's go back to our code. So now, before we print out, so now instead of this line 11, right, you can comment this out because we're not going to print temp string anymore. Now what we need to do is we need to say num, this is going to be our actual number. What should the number start at? Oh, sorry about that. Sorry, Ronak, on the recording when you edit this. Okay. So, before we've done any of this, what should our number start out at? What should the initial value be? Someone said 1? Let's try that. So if we start at 1, then I'm going to add 4 times 1, right? Plus 4. Then I'm going to add 30. Then I'm going to add 200. Do I get the right number? What number am I going to get here? 235, right? Oh, sorry. Right?
Yeah, because you have 4.
Because we had this extra 1, right? So what should this starting number be? Not 1, but 0. So we're going to start our num at 0, right? And then we're going to add stuff to it. So if we're going to loop over our number again, right? So we have to reset our index, right? Index equals 0. And now let's write this together, right? We're going to use another loop. So now, if we want to go over the string backwards, right? What we did before was we started at index 0, right? And then we did plus 1 to get index 1. And then we did plus 1 to get index 2. And we looped over the string that way. But we want to loop over the string backwards. So do we want to start at index equals 0? Where do you want to start? But we don't know how many digits it is, right? So not 2, but what do we want to start at?
0.
Remember, we want to start at the end. So how do we get the end? Right? Remember, if the string is 3 long, what's our last index? It's 2, right? So if our string is length of whatever long, what's our last index? Length of whatever, what? Not the length of the string, though, because remember, if you do the length of the string, you get an error. So you need to do the one before it, right? So your last index is the length of your string minus 1, right? Because remember, Eli is 3 letters. The last index is 2. If your string was 5 letters, the last index would be 4. If your string was 100 letters, your last index would be 99, right? Remember, it's because we start at 0. So we don't want to start index at 0. We want to start index at length of something minus 1. And what do we put in here? The length of what? Blank? What do you mean?
Length of num string.
Num string?
Wouldn't it be the string that we're talking about?
So if we put length of num string, remember what num string is, right? Num string is 7, a bunch of spaces, 7, the word will, a bunch of spaces, a 3, right? Num string is something ugly like this. Is this the length we want to use? What length do we want to use? Like for this, what number is this? It's 773, right? So do we want to use, 20 or whatever, or do we want to use 3? 3. So what is that? We called it temp string, right? So here we want the length of the temporary string, right? Okay, and now in the while loop, instead of asking if we're at the end, when do we want to stop? We don't want to add 1 until we get to the end. We want to subtract 1 until we get to the beginning. So when do we want to stop? Once we get to the beginning. So once the index is what?
Index equals 0? Or
Remember, we loop as long as it's true. So while the index is, if we just do while true, it's going to go forever, right? So it needs to be some function of input.
Like that quit thing.
It's similar to that, right? But we're using numbers here instead of strings, right? So we're going to use comparisons like less than or greater than, right? So you have the right idea that it's going to be somehow comparing to 0, right? But it's not while index equals 0, right? Because then, index starts at, in this case, index starts at 2. 2 doesn't equal 0, so it just quits instantly. So it can't be while index equals 0. It should be what? While index is what?
Huh?
What'd you say?
This is 7. I said that looks like a 7.
No, these are 7s.
Oh.
773.
Point at that because it's talking about a 2.
No. Oh, the length is 2, right? The last index is 2, right? Because it's the indices here are 0, 1, 2, right? So for this string, the last index is 2. So if we said, right, while index equals 0, this would never run because it starts at 2. 2 isn't 0. It would just immediately quit. Remember, temp string is these symbols, right? So index is a number. You're on the right track that we need to compare to 0, right? But it's not while we're equal to 0, right? We want to do it for 2, 1, 0. And then if we didn't stop it, if we said while true, what would the next one be? -1, then -2, then -3. Where do we want to cut it off, right? We want to cut it off here, right? So all the numbers, if we think about like a number line, right? All the numbers on this side of the number line should be allowed, right? And what are those numbers? Those are the numbers that are positive and also 0, right? Because we want to run it at 0, right? So we can say either, what? If we want to compare to 0, we have to say greater than or equal to 0, right? This is equivalent to saying greater than -1, right? For you agree, these mean the same thing for integers, right? So which one do we like better? Greater than or equal to 0? Yeah. I think I like that one better as well. So while the index is greater than or equal to 0, and then what are we going to put in here? Well, we're going to want to get our letter, right? And then just to confuse you guys, I want to call this digit now.
Really?
Because now we know for sure this is a digit, right? Because we just did our filtering to make sure that everything's a digit. And then here, is this num string of index? Is that what I should be doing? No? Temp string, exactly. All right, and we're about to start cutting into game time, so we're going to go through this quickly, right? But I want you to think about this over the weekend, and if you have questions, ask us on the Discord, right? So we're going to pull our digit out. Then we're going to say num plus equals, and for now we're going to do 1 times digit, and then we're going to do a little cheat here, which I was hoping we'd have more time to explain, but I know we're trying to re-implement the int function, and we're going to use the int function to help us, right? But we're only using the int function on digits, right? So it's much easier to imagine how int on digits work, right? What int of digits says is if you do int of a single digit, like 3, right? It just has a lookup table, right? It just says the string 0 goes to the number 0. The string 1 goes to the number 1, right? Because there's only 10 digits. So we're going to cheat a little bit, and we can show you at some point, maybe next weekend when I do my little practice problem that I'm going to send on the Discord, I'll show you how you could write this completely without the int function. But for now, we're going to cheat a little bit. And then the question is, do we always want to multiply by 1? No, right? So we're going to need to keep track of some multiplier that starts at 1, right? And then multiplier. Here we're going to say multiplier times digit, right? And then what happens to the multiplier? Right? So it's 1, then it's... Yeah, I can highlight it. So we just added this line here with the while loop. And remember, that multiplier starts at 1, right, for the ones place. Then what's the next place? It's the ones place, then the... What's after the ones place? The tens place, then the... And what are we doing to switch between those? Right? 1 to 10 is times 10. 10 to 100 is times 10, right? So multiplier here, we want to say multiplier equals multiplier times 10, or you could say multiplier times equals 10, right? So in the same way we have plus equals, we also have times equals. And then I'm hoping this works. You don't see any obvious bugs, do you, Will?
Tell me to look at code.
Ooh, sorry. I know we're going a little fast. I don't want to cut too much into your game time. So we'll go over this again at the start of next time. But
Index isn't changing.
oh, good. Index isn't changing, right?
That's like the most.
So index, we also need to subtract 1 from every time, right?
Yeah. Because otherwise it'll just.
So now if we do our num converter 1 space 2 space 3, we get 1, 2, 3, right?
1, 2, 3.
And to prove that this is actually a number, we're going to ask Python, what is the type of num, right? Because this kind of looks like what we already had, right? But now we're going to ask it the type, and what do you think we're going to get? What is the type of this going to be if we did this right? Is it going to be string?
Yeah.
Remember, we're trying to convert it from a string, right? So what should our type be?
Our type should be,
Do you guys remember the names of the types? I know it's been a while since we went over them, but... Okay, so it should be a number, right? What are our number types? We have 2? No, we have 2 different kinds of numbers, right? We have whole numbers and we have decimal point numbers. You remember what they're called? Huh?
Can be whole numbers.
It's going to be a whole number. Do you remember what that's called in Python?
No.
That's fine. Okay, it's called int, an integer, right?
Oh, okay.
So when we ask for the type, it should tell us that the type is int. And look at that. So we got 1, 2, 3, and its type is int, not string. So I'm going to let you guys go play games, but I just want to make sure at a high level do you understand what we did here. We're going to go through it in more detail. And if you have, I might, release an explanation on the Discord or something. But
Recap in like 2 weeks.
yeah, we'll go over this again at the start of next time. But just at a high level, do you understand what we did? Right? We took an algorithm from the real world, right? Which was, multiply each digit by its place value, right? Right? We took an algorithm from the real world and we turned that algorithm into code, right? So does everyone understand at a high level, right? We went through, we took all the characters that weren't digits, and then we multiplied them by their place value to get the number, right?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I'll try and type something up. So make sure you guys join the Discord. And while you're out there, we'll be passing around the feedback form if you guys want to give feedback. But on the Discord, on off weeks, so like we do a camp every other week, and I think next time is our last one of this semester. And then there's a summer break till the fall.
Yeah, of their academic school year. This is is
Yeah.
the last of our semester.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's one in